Mm.
It let me dismiss it yesterday and not be in that way, but okay. We are going live. There you go.
Oh, yep, it
Hopefully.
says it's now streaming live. I got another. Yep.
Yay!
Yay!
Woohoo! Maybe I can see us.
And for
So
those of you, yep, it just got the alert too, as my friend that you are alive now. Yay!
awesome. Awesome.
Blazing
So
new trails.
yes.
So I
I
apologize to
am
everybody that is watching this later and sat through all of the tech stuff at the beginning. But welcome to Mom Talk.
it's just like when you get in the coffee shop and if you're a mom, you gotta like deal with the kid's coat and probably the bag, and then my kid and your kid are going to be showing each other their toys and they're not going to listen,
Right?
and of course we're trying to get in line for the coffee and there's some young single dude behind us that's like,
Uh-huh.
I'm with the kids already, right? And we're like, but
Yeah.
mom needs coffee first. This mom needs coffee first, so you're just going to have to wait, dude, because you're single and you could have easily made it in here before me. My drive.
Yeah.
Right. Hi, I'm Mindy. And
I'm
this is
Erica.
Auntie Kirka.
Good
And
morning.
she gets to be in the coffee shop
Oh,
today.
I get to be in a coffee shop
I'm so jealous,
with
but
the
it makes
hole in
me
the fabric over here.
portal, wormhole.
There we go.
It's all good. That's how I'm getting in. But it totally works for me because I get to sit and look at Auntie Kirka like we're actually finally face to face
Right?
and right there in a coffee shop having a chit chat. And for whatever reason, I don't get to see my own live stream. There we go.
I had it
Okay.
up for a second there. I was getting the echo back,
Oh.
that delayed conversation. Having the conversation and hearing it on there, I was like, okay, this is too weird. But I'm also posting it on my page. So
Cool. Yeah. So all the fumbling aside, we've ordered apparently today. The barista only is giving me lemon water. Sorry.
I've drank half of mine already, and I'm grabbing another cup. I'm almost this week. I'm gonna wind up having to go duplicate, but yeah, there's my tank. Oh, see, no, there you go.
Oh, Tinkerbell.
She's struggling. She's struggling this morning. Oh, but yeah,
Very cool.
there we go. But yeah, I think that's my last non-duplicate cup with my morning cup.
Woohoo. That's amazing. How many days? You didn't post? Did you post the day numbers?
I did not. I should have. That would have been smart. But but I started I had the week off from work, the first week that everybody started staying home, which was St. Patrick's Day week. So I started it the following Monday when I went back to work. So it's been a month, 5 weeks. That's a lot of mugs.
It's a few. It's a few, says the girl with 3. Oh, now I have 4. But anyway.
Yeah. Dennis asked, he said, so this means that you're getting rid of some? I said, actually, yes, because I will figure out which ones I like to use and which ones I don't. So I have, from a porcelain mug standpoint, I have probably about 8 that I'm getting rid of. I haven't found any of these really to get travel cups to get rid of yet. Well, I may have gotten rid of 1 or 2, but I use them normally. I'm not using them as much right now. I'm using them because they're mugs then to post so I don't have duplicates. But when it comes to leaving the house to go to work, I use a travel mug every morning. So
right.
Unless it's damaged or not getting clean, or then I usually hold on to it until it's not usable anymore. So
true. So you're surrendering some of your mugs.
I am surrendering some of my mugs. You are correct. I'm done sharing now.
Space.
Sorry, I was also I was on my phone sharing all this stuff. So
Yay.
yes, I am surrendering all of my mugs.
No.
Not all of my mugs, some of my mugs.
That's good. Yes, yes. Yay. More coffee, more coffee. So today we decided to talk about surrender. Why did we decide to talk about surrender? Oh, because it's a lesson we need to learn, right?
Because yes. I don't know. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I was reminded this morning between our chat and this about surrendering with my child. So we talked about kids' coping skills before, and how you don't want to say that we have to bypass the logic with them, but we really, at least with my daughter and in my experience, I have to get into what can I do for her body so that her body can make the biochemical shifts to make her calm down. Because I'm a words person, and I will find the logic. I will, create the argument, and it just creates an argument and just creates tension. And so if I can surrender that need to be logical and correct, then we can do things that can help her shift, which will help me feel better as well, because nobody likes a toddler at a meltdown. The toddler doesn't like to be in a meltdown. And so just even remembering that aspect and surrendering the need to be right, so that things can get better and brighter. And there's a lot of times with my daughter that surrendering makes a world of difference, especially with all the meltdowns that she had at the beginning of this, that fighting her about it was not the answer.
I think sometimes, and surrender for me is really hard, and that I was not joking in my post when I said that you're always talking to me about that, because I'm a control. I'm total. I don't know if I'm a total 100% type A kind of person, but I'm right there in between a type A and type B kind of person. I like control. I like to, or at least that illusion that I'm in control, and to try to push and make things happen. And I think having kids was my first real opportunity to just, I think in our 20s, in some ways, we just naturally do that anyway, because we're accepting of our place, in quotes, kind of in things, right? As we're just coming out of college and everything. But truly having kids was that opportunity of, I can't control, right? And they can't control, because their bodies, their minds just work a little bit different. And surrendering to, how do I help him cope? How do I help her cope through this situation? Because I might even be able to logic my own mind out of something if I'm in the same situation, but I have 40 something years of experience to go, okay, I don't need to have a meltdown about this, right? We can talk about our own surrendering, but here it's surrendering to the fact that they can't logic their way out of it. Sometimes, like you said, they don't want to have the meltdown, but they are, because they're just in such overwhelm for whatever reason, right? They just can't comprehend. What do you mean I can't have a jelly bean for breakfast? Why can't I have a jelly bean for breakfast? I hear you saying why I can't have a jelly bean for breakfast, but because, like you said last week, they're in this moment, and it's like, but I want the jelly bean for breakfast.
Right.
Right. And I might be able to logic my 14-year-old and say, but the jelly bean is sugar, and it's a treat. It's a sometimes food, right?
Not a start your day off food.
Okay, fine. Yeah, okay, I get that. I'll have a couple of jelly beans after lunch or whatever. I'll have breakfast right now. My 4-year-old's like, okay, I'll have a bowl of cereal and a jelly bean.
Can I put the jelly beans on my, yeah, you offer cereal instead of a jelly bean. I can put jelly beans in my cereal? That's
Right.
not what Mama said.
Of course, with some of the cereals on the market, that's essentially sometimes what they're getting.
You may
anyway.
as well. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's that surrendering of you don't know always what's happening, right? Even with a newborn, who definitely can't tell you, right? You have to surrender the fact that and especially with your first child, I don't know what I'm doing, and that's okay, right?
Oh, yeah, it kind of starts with labor. You might have a birth plan, but those first pains, we're going to tell you, the more you fight them, the harder it gets, the less that the baby's going to descend. So that's a very good start in the lessons of surrender. Not that we always realize that that's how we start it. But in my life, lessons in surrender came before motherhood. Some of my first lessons in surrender were in 12-step rooms, where they talk about surrendering to a God of your own understanding. But the first way that I was able to accept surrender as an acceptable thing or something that would move me forward or better my life was one of the ladies in those rooms that was saying, well, honey, you can either be right or you can be happy. Which one do you want to be? And I really wanted to be right. Like I really wanted to be right. I wanted him to be wrong. I wanted his addiction to be wrong. I wanted his actions to be wrong. I wanted me stating my truth to be right. And in my world, in my head, in my body, it was true, and it will always be true, and that's okay. But there's that intersection of the two of us, and I could either continue to bash the right against him or choose to be happy. Luckily enough, at that point, we weren't in the same physical space. So there was less bashing. And another statement that the same lady would say was, when you're arguing with a toddler, when you're arguing with an addict, just using the phrase, you could be right. That's a surrender statement right there. It's not saying, oh, yeah, you're right. It's not being sarcastic. It's not losing your ground or your footing on where you are. It's just allowing the opportunity for there to be something else. You could be right. You could be right. And my ex about dropped to a cement floor when I said that for the first time. But he couldn't say anything else. Like it took away the struggle. It surrendered the fight without being ugly. I don't know how else to say it, like you could be right. It's just a gracious surrendering, so there's nothing else to push against.
Well, and I think then the same applies, like when you look at conditions and and we're not saying, when we're talking surrendering, we're not talking about, I said I posted, it's not giving up, right? When you think about what's happening around you, I mean, I've gone through tremendous grief in my life. I've gone through job loss in my life. It's my strongest struggles have been when I have fought my feelings about the conditions that I'm in. So not allowing the grief of the loss, right? Whether it's the loss of a person, right? It's, in college, I had to face that in college, losing my mom, my grandmother, my godmother, all in the space of 2 years, right? And if I fought that grief and not surrendered to some of it. And in some ways, the nature that I am, I did fight some of it. So I am dealing with some of it now because, again, I was in college and busy and yada, yada. But, you know, same thing, loss of job, right? If you fight that situation and don't accept the grief of the loss and even the lessons, right? And the possibilities of what could come, then you're kind of pushing against your own growth and accepting the positives that may come. So even out of the situation we're in now, you know, I'm lucky and I accept that and I'm grateful. I want to say I'm lucky. I'm grateful that I am currently employed, and I'm grateful that I do have to take some time off, but it's not as much as a lot of other people do. And I'm grateful for that. I still have to acknowledge my loss and what that's going to mean to us on a physical level, because it's not also, I think, turning a blind eye and pretending it's not happening, right? You still have to accept that something's happening, but it's the surrendering of that I'm in control of the entire situation, but I am in control of how I feel about it, and then how I process it and accept it, and then how I react to it and move forward with it, because it's still happening, right? Some of us have been locked in our houses for 6 weeks, right? Depending on where you are. So it's like, it's surrendering to, okay, this is our situation right now, and how does that make me feel, so that you can then get to the next step of that loss and that grief and the healing that's going to need to come after that.
And surrendering is a step in faith. So when you're someone like me who wants to figure it out, you know, I'm the scrappy kid that, yeah, job loss, divorce, whatever, suddenly you don't have housing, you don't have a job. Like, I'm going to figure it out. But I've been in all of that figuring out, it's all been my strength. It's all been me. And I am a strong person. I'm a smart person. I can say that. It's not a gloaty thing. It's just, I'm resourceful. I have figured out how to figure things out. But because I figured things out, I've gone my way, which is not a wrong path. But when I've had to figure things out, I get the hard things, right? I get the job that I basically had to beg for because I was well overqualified for. And then you have to smash yourself into the little box to fit into the job, right? And it's not comfortable and whatever. And the few times in my life that I have surrendered and done things like, okay, well, I don't have a job, but I can't live every day sucking the life out of every day, miserable because I don't have a job, and done things like when I signed up to write about a online fitness boot camp, which is an ebook on my site. And so I took those however long, 12 weeks that I was supposed to write and blog about this thing, and I got the boot camp for free, right? And I wasn't into that very long, but it gave me something to do. I needed to have this fitness routine. I needed to have this food routine. I needed to write about it. Writing was my jam. And in doing that, then I landed a job, right? This guy with a hunky voice calls me back after submitting a resume. I'm like, hey, that sounds great. And it ended up being a really good job where I was supported for who I was. But if I wasn't doing something that I enjoyed, involving my brain and just surrendering that something had to come. Like, I showed up, I did the work. I was sending out resumes, I looked on job boards, etc., but I didn't sit there every day going, there has to be another job. There has to be a better job, just sitting on
Right.
Monster or whatever, right? Just surrendering it made that a better experience, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Other thoughts? I can't believe we're getting close to 30 minutes already.
I know, right? It just goes by so fast.
It does. That's why when we're in a normal coffee shop, it's like 3 hours. It's been 3 hours. What are you talking about?
What do you
I
mean?
just finished my first cup. No wonder it was cold. The kids are like, Mom,
Yeah,
I'm
well,
hungry.
and that's just and to me, that's the perfect surrender, right? Because you did something to work your mind, to move forward from a skill standpoint, and to productively keep yourself busy, right? Not keep yourself busy just for the sake of busyness and movement, but also productively do it, while also, not trying to push the underlying situation, right? And you're not ignoring that situation is happening, kind of thing, and pushing it down. So, and everybody does that their own way, and that's why I think I see it all over right now. I think we need to I would love to see less judgment posts, right? Because there's no one way to deal with the current situation. If you are the type of mom that, to work through it, and your surrender is, okay, my kid's going to have the same kind of structure that they normally have when school's in session, and that's going to be how my family processes this and keeps normalcy as best as we can, then that's great. That's how your family operates. I would still kind of put a warning in there to say, just make sure you're not doing it to ignore everything that's happening on around you, right? But if your family's the kind where it's like just going with the flow and not having a structure, having that level of structure actually causes more anxiety in my family and causes more pushing among your family, right? If your kids are good with that kind of a structure at school, but it's harder to do it at home, you're just going to have a lot more stress at home if you try to get them into that. All right, 8 o'clock is breakfast, 8:30 is math, 9, you know what I mean? Then don't cause them more stress, right? That's the surrender to it. Knowing what best fits your family or even each kid, right? My teenager has taken to this online school very well from a learning perspective. She gets up in the morning. I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. It's April in the desert. It's been windy and growing, and every
Yellow
time
everywhere.
I go outside, I come in just anyway. And I don't even have horrible allergies usually, but it's April. I get them in April. But, she has taken to the online portion of it, and she gets in and she watches the lessons. Sometimes she attends the live lessons and Q&A. Sometimes she just sits and watches the videos. She gets her work done. She usually works from like 8:30 to 11. She's done. And she's processing through it all right. And she's done that herself. She gets herself up in the morning. It's easier for her to get up right now than it did to get her out for school in the morning. You know what I mean? So, but not every child's like that. I mean, the 4-year-old's not in school yet, so I don't have that to compare to. But if he was the kind of kid where it's like, okay, well, this 20 minutes we're going to do math, and in 2 hours we'll do science, then that's what you need to do, right? And I think just acknowledging that's the differences on how your family is going to do it, surrendering to the fact that that's okay. And then where you need to communicate to your child's school, right? Because I know every school district's doing it differently too. I've talked to some friends with kids on the East Coast and even here in Phoenix, and it's like Harley School is very relaxed. They get the lessons on Monday as long as they're done by Friday and turned in. Excuse me, now I'm coughing. They can turn them in electronically or physically, but they're getting credit for it. They're getting attendance credit for it. I've got friends that their kids are, they're getting quizzes on Fridays. I've got friends with kindergartners that have 5 hours of schoolwork every day. I think surrendering to your family may not fit into some of those molds too, and communicating that to the school and just saying, look, this is what my family's doing and this is what we're doing. And, or even to the other parents, because they may be in the same situation, but just knowing that it's okay. If those things that you're being told you should be doing, if you don't fit, that's okay. I mean, I think I've been spending less time on some social media just because that itself is causing enough anxiety and stress from any side, right? This is how you do this. This is how you do this. This is how you're supposed to do this. This is the structure you need to have here, or the non-structure. It's like just surrendering to the fact that everybody has opinions and you need to find what's best for how you're going to work through it.
Yes. Surrendering for me is realizing I don't have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are some things that will just happen. When my kid's in the middle of a meltdown, I don't necessarily have to figure out how to get her out of it. Like, sometimes I just have to be present with her
mm-hmm.
and let the little Tasmanian devil spin until she's done. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So I don't necessarily always have to figure it out. I don't necessarily always have to figure it out right now. Our brains, when we're not actively figuring out, are brilliant at receiving the information that we need. I mean, it's why you're like, oh, I had this great idea in the shower. Mm-hmm. By the time I got out, blah, 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 blah. You lost it, whatever. I was driving in my car and realized that I could blah, blah. So if you can choose to surrender just enough to realize that figuring it out will figure itself out. Like,
right.
Part of it's just, if faith or trust in God doesn't work for you, you can lean on the fact that you aren't the only person on the planet. You might have family or friends, or who knows, there might be an expert on YouTube that you come across that messages and guidance and
mm-hmm.
help can come in so many ways. And if you take off the blinders, stop, wiggling and beating your head against the one door that you demand to open, you might realize that there's 6 others that are already open for you. Not to be all cliche and whatever, but it's cliche for a reason, because it's happened enough in life and to enough people that it's a common thing, right? If I sit and think about it, the times that I just let go of needing it to be this way, this other thing came in, right? When I am not so ego invested in something, then I can allow more possibilities when it's not me figuring it out. Something better might come along that's perfectly suited for me, and it's something that I still have to interact with and choose and fulfill, like do the do of it. But just that laying back and allowing, I just keep thinking of allowing, the art of allowing. Just, so many times in life I've been like, well, I don't know how do you stop doing whatever? Well, you stop. how do you stop eating sweets? Well, you stop buying them. If they're not in your house, then you can't eat them. Well, how do you stop buying them? You just stop. Like, yeah, there's no like take 14 steps and, sniff a candle and only walk counterclockwise through the grocery store. No, you just don't put them in your hands and put them in your cart and then take them in your house. So surrendering and allowing is the same thing. You stop yourself whenever you're pushing, when you're arguing, when you're needing it to be one way, and you let go. Right?
And it takes practice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because, I mean, most of us by nature, human nature is not to let go. It's dig in, hold on with our fingernails, right? Especially if change is involved, right? So it's not like, and for some people, if I made the decision and I flipped the switch and it happened, and that's great. And for some others, it's practice.
I made the decision. I made the decision
right now. And you know what? Tomorrow, you might have to make the decision again. Yeah. The next day, it might be a little bit easier. The next day might be a little bit easier. And then all of a sudden, the day after that, you have to make the decision again. Like sometimes, and that's a little bit more how I work. As we know, it's more of a, even sometimes moment by moment, right? In the times right now, it might even be a moment by moment. You have a family of 5 in the same house for 6 weeks. Yep. It might be a moment by moment thing. And there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Because you're consciously choosing again.
Yes.
Doing it again. So.
And I mean, it's something that does get easier. And when you choose to also acknowledge what actually happened. I was struggling with X. I decided to surrender. I decided to sit down and pray about it. I decided to journal it out. I decided that things are working out for me. And then XYZ happened, right? Like I decided that, I'm an intelligent, hardworking person. There has to be a job out there for me that meets my skills and whatever. Right. And I decided, and eventually kind of happened. When you were talking early on about the grieving thing, and it's amazing how much of life is really that grief process. And how the full process of grief doesn't happen without some point having to surrender, right? So 5 years ago, this coming summer, I was in Colorado in a coffee shop. Looks a lot like the one where you're sitting. And seeing all these couples with babies and toddlers coming in, and I'm crying over my mocha, my cortado, probably. One of the reasons that I really love that coffee shop is they make cortados and they make them really well. Mm-hmm. Sitting there crying over the fact that that wasn't my life. For years, I thought I was going to be married to this man. We were going to live in Colorado. We were going to have babies. And here I was, divorced from that man, living in Colorado, not having babies. And it wasn't very long before a baby came into my life. Once I finally had that grief, because, I grieved different things. I grieved the divorce. I grieved being the age I was, and maybe never having babies or whatever. But like that dream that had even been pushed so far aside that even when I was married, I wasn't thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Sitting in that physical location and having that grief and being like, yeah, that was really important to me. And I finally just surrendered. Like, I've had a lot of life since then. I've had a lot of life that I've enjoyed. And I have the potential to have more life that I can enjoy if I can just be sad in this moment and acknowledge that it was really important back then.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have space. Just like you're going to have space in your cabinet for more mugs.
Well,
or fewer
and
mugs,
then,
so you have space, whatever.
well, and sometimes, well, I don't know how to say it. And sometimes, and I'm just gonna maybe segue into a part of maybe next week is because it's 8:40. And sometimes you need to ask for help, right? To do that, and that's a hard thing. It's really hard for most people to ask for help, even physically, right? Sometimes it's even hard. Can you help me move a chair? That's even hard sometimes. Never mind when you're talking the mental, the emotional, and reaching out and saying, you know what, I'm really struggling right now. I need some help. You know, especially when you're in a situation we're in right now where you feel like, well, nobody has the bandwidth, to use the corporate terminology. Nobody has the mental bandwidth right now because they're all going through this, and nobody has time to help me. Nobody is available, has that availability to help me. Actually, you never know, because while I may not be able to help myself, I may also be struggling with that and afraid to ask for help, and we can help each other too. Right.
Being seen and being heard is huge.
Mm-hmm. And even sometimes it's, and learning how to ask for help even from the people that you're in the house with, right? I mean, whether it's your parents, whether it's your children, whether it's your husband or wife or significant other, asking for help and acknowledging to them that you're struggling is, I think, a really big first step in surrendering that control or that illusion of control, right? Maybe we can talk a little bit about
Sounds
that
brilliant.
next week.
Yes, write it down somewhere so we remember. Asking mommy talk. Mommy talk next week will be about asking for help, vocabulary lessons, how to control your mouth.
No, yeah, nope, all good. Yeah, so next week we'll be talking about asking for help. And I think that's because I think that's a big step in a lot of this too.
Yes. Yeah. So glad we're back on Facebook. It is recorded. Yeah. We'll have it up on YouTube shortly.
Let's say, because this is a little bit different. So let's say, like, it may not be up today on YouTube. It might be tomorrow, but we will work on getting it up on Facebook, on YouTube. Yeah, we'll work
all
on
the places, because we can.
And then we'll be back next Sunday because we like talking and we like coffee, and
yeah, maybe the barista will get my order right next week. Or mom might have had to bribe somebody with a hot chocolate after this for some good behaviors, right? Surrendering to what is necessary in the moment. And I am not above making somebody wait for hot chocolate. Because life. It's life, and it's good, and it's good to be together. I love seeing you in a coffee shop.
I can't wait till we can be in one. It'll happen.
It's gonna be.
In the meantime, maybe I'll find a different coffee shop to be in next week.
Oh. And maybe I'll find a green screen so I can be in a coffee shop too, or the beach, Savannah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Have a wonderful
care.
week, everybody.
Bye.